These are all shared lines. They're not daunting. Death, my Lord, a grave, he shall not live. Enough. I dreamt a dream tonight, so did I. Well, what was yours? The dreamers often lie. And I'll not be concerned with what play that's from, but having them make up a backstory. And again, I'm getting them to own it. Make up, well, what do you think it is? I know it's from Romeo and Juliet, but what are they talking about? What's the dreamer? This is just a little example of our adult program
now
and how they live with the text.
Our rebels
outside the
now
classroom.
are ended.
These are actors,
These our actors.
as I foretold you.
As I foretold you. Give me the whole thing again in one block.
Our rebels now are ended.
Our rebels now are ended.
These are actors,
These our actors.
as I have foretold
As
you.
I have foretold you.
We're all spirits,
We're all spirits.
and are melted into air,
And are melted into air.
into thin air,
Into thin air.
and like the baseless fabric of this vision,
And like the baseless fabric of this vision.
the cloud-capped towers,
The cloud-capped towers.
the gorgeous palaces,
The gorgeous
the
palaces.
solemn
The
temples,
solemn temple.
the great globe itself.
The great globe itself. We are such stuff
That's right.
that dreams are made of.
Yeah.
And our little life is rounded with a sleep. As dreams made on in our little life.
And almost, it's like, how big can you dream?
Yeah.
So even though we meet for 250 hours, they're living with it on the yard and throughout the year. So that initial choice of material, trying to pick something that I think they might connect to. Finding the current relevance and the connection to their lives. That's kind of how we ended up doing Romeo and Juliet last year, was all of these gang issues. And that's kind of where we got that idea. This is one of our actors, Larry, who spent 17 years in prison through playing Lady Macduff. Through playing Lady Macduff, was able to make some really powerful connections about how his victim might have felt being home alone with her children as he was. He also was able to step into his single mother's shoes about how she must have felt. Working on Julius Caesar, standing, doing that Mark Antony monologue that we just did, standing over Caesar's body. I asked just a show of hands, but how many people could connect with seeing a friend of yours shot or stabbed? And it was a good deal of them. So they're making those connections, and all of a sudden it's not 400-year-old words anymore. Identifying the emotions. So I'm working with a population that is not used to expressing emotions in a healthy way. So our group provides a safe emotional discharge. It provides a place to experience those emotions. And often they think the character's angry. Why is your character angry all the time? So we're allowing them to maybe try on some different emotions. One of our inmates explains it as a toolbox. So, okay, I now have more tools in my box. And had I had all of these different emotion tools, I probably wouldn't have committed my crime. Impulses, impulse control, controlling your impulses, exploring impulses that are safe and positive. That's why when I'm directing a play, I will say, well, what do you want to do there? Where do you want to go? Do you want to move? Okay, well then do it. And empowering them to be able to have that self-awareness to monitor and pursue their own impulses that are not hurting somebody. Hearing the play. In Shakespeare's play, people went to hear a play. They weren't published till after he was dead. It's all there. The brilliance of the language, why I choose to work with Shakespeare, it's all there for us. We just have to say the words. But saying it out loud. And so I always encourage them when they're working on their own, as you see the guys in the yard, to say it out loud, to own it. This was one of our actors who played the prince in Romeo and Juliet last year. He was coming in to break up the fight at the beginning of the play. Wow, you men, you beasts. Just couldn't break them up. I said, come on, you Dave, just use your voice. You have to command them. Okay, guys, everybody make as much sound as you can. And then finally he found his voice. What ho, you men, you beasts! And afterwards he said, I haven't raised my voice in a decade. You know? And so we're empowering him. I also always tell the guys that very rarely do people in a nice, loud, clear voice say, I have absolutely no idea how I feel right now. You know, when you use your voice, you kind of have to commit to how you feel. So it makes them commit. It makes them make a choice. Oh, I went back to the top, sorry. Even though they're 400-year-old words, I tell them these are your words now. Own them, put your own spin on them, bring your life experience and your own truth to them. Kind of similar to sports in that we're collaborating towards an end product. So I think anytime you have the opportunity to have some culminating event or something that they can be working towards. Multiple methods from listening. As I said, with the art, or can you incorporate music or visual arts? I bring in a playwright now. This is an outline of our multidisciplinary program. It started with just doing scenes and monologues with the juveniles. Now we bring in older inmates to mentor. They write letters and ask questions of the inmates. We journal every day. They make a costume piece. They playwright. We have a prejudice reduction specialist that comes in. So I'm just trying to find what angle can I get to them. One student said, I rap. Okay, we've been looking for bridges for our scenes, so create Romeo raps. So he created Romeo raps and telling the story. This was the very first, this is almost the actual size of that very first student who had never painted anything before. And we just gave him the materials. Now we're doing it in a more non-literal expression. What are that was, I believe, the emotions in Romeo and Juliet, how they can connect to that. Also, a non-threatening way to get them to perform Shakespeare is through a choral reading. And again, we're breaking it down, so it's limited responsibility, but we're saying it as a group, and so we're breaking it down. And I've also had students in a choral reading who might have some serious reading issues or be dyslexic or not be able to read, but they can come in early and I can work with them. And this is simple enough that I can connect with, okay, your line is I die, and your cue line is thus with a kiss. So it's a nice non-threatening way, but it's also the very first time I get them up on their feet is through a choral reading, and then we'll make the choices. So how are we going to stage this? What do you want to do? And lastly, owning the text. This is that same actor, Sammy, who was out in the yard practicing his lines, working on a monologue that he's worked and now invested and made a personal connection.
We are announced to do our country laws. And if the limbs act, the film made a greater share of honor. The what? God, peace. The what? I would like what? The greater share of honor.
What is it that you want us to do? To be what?
Share the honor. Honor. Share the honor. He that hath no stomach to this fight, let him depart.
Look at him.
Let him depart. Man of prowess. For he today that shed his blood with me shall pay my brother. Be he never so vowed, this day shall gentle his condition, and gentlemen in England now bed shall think themselves accursed, and hold their merits cheap. Well, did he speak, that for with us on St. Crispian's Day,
Now, Ray, just go get him.
Just some reminders that I constantly have to check myself and remember, okay, negative energy, don't bring in negative energy, don't feed off of negative energy, particularly those students with oppositional defiance disorder. They will try to bait me, try to get me upset about something, and how they most of their life, how they've gotten the reactions through negativity. So try not to fall into that baiting. Constant reflection. Even now we're doing our performance here in June, and I'll stop the scene and say, okay, what are you saying there? What are you saying? Because even though we might have determined 5 months ago what they were saying, it's making that connection. And then I'll say, so how are they feeling? So what emotion are you breathing in before you come on the scene? So connecting with the retention. Constantly remind myself to praise and recognize success when it happens. Also in their personal life, they moved up a level in their treatment program, particularly with the juveniles, minimizing the downtime. And I'll have much more material planned than what I know we'll get to. But it's being able to riff. If I know something is just not working, just go to something else, let it go. And trying to minimize that downtime, particularly with the ADD students. Just keep it moving. Repetition, the chronic exposure, and that's what I was talking about, the memory growth through that with. The routine and consistency, when I very first started this, and I came back the second day, and I'll never forget one of the kids said, you came back, but we were so bad, you know, and just looking at them and saying, listen, I'm going to come back regardless, you know. They don't get that in their lives because in the past, people give up on them. So just to say that I'm going to come back, and you can throw whatever you want at me. I don't know if you've heard of this book. It's a great study. He came to Louisville, Dr. Catterall, Doing Well and Doing Good by Doing Art. It's a great book, and he did a study looking at the impact of arts education over time. And it showed it was a significant predictor of students' later academic achievement and community involvement through attending those that attended arts-rich schools. They studied 25,000. It was interesting that they saw those who attended arts-rich schools had more likely to have college attendance, grades, employment, and level of terminal degree, and more volunteerism and even political participation through the arts. This was our most recent production that we closed last year, which was Romeo and Juliet. And if we think that the teachers or the actors, I thought, were there to ignite, to inspire, to tell the truth, who better than my mentor Shakespeare for some last Shakespeare text to, when you're teaching, speak the speech, I pray you. As I pronounced it to you, should be on the tongue, for if you mouth it, as many of your players do, I as lief the town crier and spoke my lines. Nor do not saw the air too much your hand thus, but use all gently. For in the very torrent tempest, and as I might say, whirlwind of your passion, you must acquire to get a temperance that may give it smoothness. Oh, it offends me to the soul to hear a robustious, periwig painted fellow tear a passion to tatters, to very rags, to split the ears of the groundlings, who for the most part are capable of nothing but inexplicable dumb shows and noise.